You're with Julian on the Brownlow and a review of Gladiator 2. I haven't really seen anything that was part of the Oscars conversation that I hadn't already reviewed last year, but probably the biggest Christmas Day streaming I wouldn't mind betting was Gladiator 2, which did reasonably well at the box office and reasonably well with critics. Director Ridley Scott showing that Hollywood will remake and reproduce and recast every single thing, even if there is absolutely no reason on God's green earth to do so. They remade Gladiator, and without Russell Crowe in his defining performance. Replacing him with Paul Mescal, and like many of the reboots that have happened over the last sort of 10, 15 years, it commits a sin which is following the screenplay from the original far, far too closely, which invites enormous comparisons with the others. I mean, Creed was a decent film. It was a pretty decent Rocky reboot, but it did try and follow that Rocky screenplay too much. The Force Awakens was a reasonably good Star Wars film, especially considering what followed it, and followed that first Star Wars film ridiculously. And last year's Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes really did follow that last Planet of the Apes film of the trilogy, the recent trilogy, just to a ridiculous degree. But it was a very, very good film. And this one follows the plot of Gladiator so much that it just continually invites comparisons with the original, which unfortunately, I mean, Ridley Scott is one of the most interesting directors in the world because you never know what you're going to get. He has done such a wide range of weird film. He did The House of Gucci. He did The Counselor, which I think is an absolutely amazing film with incredibly big flaws, but still an incredible film. And he's done some historical films as well since Gladiator, and don't let anyone bribe you into saying that Kingdom of Heaven, the director's cut, isn't dire. It is. But he did The Last Duel recently, which was an amazing film, a really original film, but didn't get really any attention. And this one's done quite well. Now, it does follow the entire plot of the first film to a degree where it's like you get the person enslaved into gladiatorial duties. By this time, by one of the only people that actually stands up to their predecessor, Denzel Washington, with his New York accent. And a lot of these characters are loosely based on actual people and actual events. There were some similarities with the original Gladiator film and the characters and what happened, and there are with this, with certain timelines moved around and so on. But Denzel is basically the Oliver Reed character from the first one, and one of the few that does stand up to that comparison. He's very good in this as a owner of the gladiators, but this time with much more political ambitions. And again, we get, the gladiator on the outskirts, which is this Paul Mescal character, excelling in the gladiatorial arena. Are we not entertained? And then moving up to the Colosseum in Rome, and there being these big meanies orchestrating the whole thing. There's virtually nothing in it that isn't in some way referenced in the original film. This time we get two versions of Joaquin Phoenix. One of whom is a decent actor, actually, but I can't even remember which way around it is. It might be Joseph Quinn. There's basically two brothers that are insane Caligula-style Roman emperors running the whole thing into the dust. One of them is completely insane, and the other one is actually a little bit more savvy with what's going on. We get Connie Nelson. Like, the original cast of Gladiator was amazing. Every single person in that main cast, Connie Nelson, Joaquin Phoenix, Russell Crowe, Oliver Reed, everyone was fantastic. And Connie Nelson holds up well here. She's really the only main holdover I can think of. And Pedro Pascal, he occupies one of the main roles, and he's very good as well. He's very good in everything. Paul Mescal as the Russell Crowe character is dreadful. I don't understand the casting. Russell Crowe brought so much gravity towards that role, and Paul Mescal is babe in the woods here. He doesn't have any gravity to him at all. He's a little bit goofy. I just don't understand why he was cast in this role. He doesn't suit him. He doesn't have the gravity to pull it off. As people that would say, that's nowhere near Russell Crowe's best performance, but he brought so much gravity towards that stoicism and everything else, and the heroism of his persona. And we're asked to believe virtually the same thing about Paul Mescal, who comes across like he should be in a rom-com. He's absolutely dreadful and completely undercuts much of the movie, but it's not just his fault. The writing is pretty shocking. The dialogue is pretty poor. It does look like it cost a fortune, which it did. I think something like $300 million. There's no way it made that back in the box office, because it would have probably need to have made $550-600 million, which I don't think it did. What did it make at the end of its run? 455, and I think they would be happy with 455 million, given the amount of Marvel and comic book related movies that cost $200 million that barely make that. I think they'll be more than happy with this being regarded as a success, but it is a goofy film compared to the original. The opening with the boats at the start, it really does look like a widescreen epic is about to appear, and that's the most visually arresting part of the entire movie. Everything else comes down to, well, instead of having tigers jump out of the pit, we'll have a guy riding a rhino, which was pretty cool. But it's just basically that, substituting everything that happened in the first film. I don't know why he made it. I really don't know why he made it. So I won't waste that much more time on it. Some of it does look very impressive. But virtually all of the characters are far, far less than in the original Gladiator movie. Pedro Pascal, Connie Nielsen, and Denzel Washington, and possibly the Joseph Quinn character, unless he is the insane one who wasn't very good. They're all pretty decent, but everyone else is pretty rubbish, and the writing's bad, and the storyboard is just basically how can we change the original screenplay to Gladiator. So unfortunately, I would say that I got to the end of it unsatisfied, and I'm going to give Gladiator 2 a 4.5 out of 10.